welcome everyone. We are at the top of the hour, so we are going to kick things off. I am so happy you're here, and I want to welcome you to American Family Insurance DreamBank, where we believe in the transformative power of dreams. I'm Madeline, and I'm so excited to have you with us today. Here at American Family Insurance, we believe the communities are stronger and the future is brighter when people are actively pursuing their dreams. That's why we created DreamBank, an inspirational community destination and digital experience dedicated to dreamers everywhere. From our daily event series to immersive signature programs, there's something for every dreamer. Our always free offerings are designed to help you celebrate your dream journey, overcome obstacles, and stay motivated. Now, I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker. Ingrid Fetell is a designer, author, and founder of The Aesthetics of Joy. Through her work, Ingrid helps people bring more joy into their lives and work through the power of design. Take it away, Ingrid.
Thank you so much, Madeline. And hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you today talking about secrets for creating joy in a rental. So I'm just going to dive right in. This is me. I am a designer and author, as Madeline said, on a mission to help people create more joy in life through design. Um, I got into this about 15 years ago, and I started when I was in design grad school studying this intersection between design, neuroscience, and psychology to try to understand how the things around us influence our emotions and well-being. And this research has taken me to some interesting places, to TED. If you want more background on my work, you can always check out my TED Talk, a book that has been translated into 25 different languages about how these things in our surroundings influence our daily joy. And then applying these ideas back into where I think it matters most in our home. So I teach a course on how to apply these ideas of creating joy in our lives into the physical design of our homes. So I'm going to be sharing some ideas from that work today. So today we're going to talk about how to turn a rented home into a space that brings you joy and calm and inspiration every single day. And I think that this is so important because I think a lot of us, we want a beautiful home, we want a functional home, but I think a lot of us have not been taught to see our homes as more than just a place that we live and our stuff. It actually is the foundation of your well-being. And so I want to share just a few figures from the research on this, just to show you what I mean. This is really one thing I hope you'll take away from this. You start to look around your home and see this is actually an integral part of my health, of my relationships, of every aspect of my life. So, in studies of work environments, people working in spaces that had art and color and plants were 32% more productive than people working in bland cubicles. So, the colors and patterns and textures, you probably heard that term dopamine decor. It's more than just dopamine and feeling good. It actually influences our productivity, our creativity. All of that is influenced by our surroundings. Research has also shown that our physical environment can be linked to aggression and irritability in the home. So, if there's tension in the home, sometimes that can be exacerbated, that can be made worse by the quality of the home itself. And so, this is another reason why I think it's so important that you all are here thinking about investing in your homes and making them spaces of joy. And people working in spaces with better lighting are more active during the day and sleep an average of 30 minutes more per night. So just having more, better lighting can influence the quality of your sleep, which influences all of these other factors in your life. So environment has a deep impact on your health, your relationships, your productivity, your creativity, and more. And so when you're thinking about your home, it's not just about, I want a beautiful home that, people come over and they say, wow, this is such a beautiful space. It's really about creating a sanctuary for yourself so that as you move through your days, you feel held and supported and cared for. So I believe that when you change your home, you change your life. And this is why everyone deserves to live in a home that sparks joy. Whether you rent or whether you own, it doesn't matter. Everyone should have a space that feels good to them. So let's get into it. One thing I wanted to just talk about is, There are some challenges to being a renter, and I just want to put those up front. So because I'm going to be talking about ways to work around some of these challenges, but I just want to get them, surface them before we dive in. So of course, there's a lot that you can't change. When you're in a space that someone else owns, you may have to work with their cabinets or their wall color or some of those features. So that's, you have fixed constraints. And of course, every home has that, but renters have more. You also don't always know how long you'll live in a space. So that's something to think about, and to be aware of that, it can be sometimes harder to plan how much to invest in your space because you don't know how long you might be there. And landlords often make design decisions based on cost and resale value. So they're not thinking about joy, maybe the way that you are. And so sometimes that means that they're using the default white paint, or they're using, gray floors that aren't especially appealing. And so you have these constraints to work around, that aren't necessarily joy focused. But there are also benefits of renting. And one of the benefits I see is that you can take risks because it's not permanent. So I see, some of my students who rent, I see them, they might paint a mural in their entryway and they don't have to worry about getting too attached to it because they can paint it over, it's one wall, they can paint it over and it's not permanent. Um, you can also focus your budget on things that make a higher impact on daily life. So homeowners spend so much money on renovations and maintenance. And I have seen this time and time again with my students where they sometimes spend so much money on renovating, or on home maintenance issues, putting on a new roof or something, that they don't have any money left over for a nice sofa. They don't have any money left over for a beautiful throw blanket or the kinds of things that make daily living really wonderful. So when you are renting, you don't have to worry about a lot of those costs. And so while it might be nice to renovate, sometimes it's actually very freeing to just be able to focus your budget on the things that are going to make daily life really wonderful. Okay, so let's go into these 6 secrets. And I'm going to go through each one. A couple have exercises, and you are welcome to share your thoughts in the chat. You can share your thoughts all along with me in the chat. I would love to hear them. But especially when I get into some of the interactive exercises, I would love to hear your thoughts. So number one is begin with a feeling. So I don't know about you, but I used to spend a lot of time, looking at home decorating books. And I would, when I was renting, I would look and I would get into all this advice about decorating. And then I would realize that a lot of it doesn't quite work in your rental. There's these beautiful, highly styled photos, and they don't work in a space, that you're renting, a lot of them. And that can make it easy to feel stuck. And so instead, what I think is so important is to zoom back out and focus on how you want to feel in your space, because that is something that anyone should do before they start decorating, because it can be a guide, to help find things for your space that are going to feel good to you. So try this. How do you want to feel in your home? Just describe the feeling in 3 words or a short phrase. You can drop those words in the chat. And I'm going to share a little bit more about how this relates to my approach. So one of the things that is sort of a cornerstone of my research is what I call the aesthetics of joy. And these are collections of elements or sensations that reliably, universally stimulate joy the world over. I'm going to give you a few examples. So everywhere you go on earth, round shapes seem to be joyful to people. Pops of bright color, always joyful. Symmetrical shapes and repeating patterns, a sense of abundance and multiplicity, a feeling of lightness or elevation. So these are elements that you can put into your space, you can infuse into your space, and use them to create more joy. So energy, vibrant color and light, abundance, that multiplicity and variety. Some ones I didn't show, like freedom, nature, wildness, open space, harmony, balance, symmetry, and flow. So you can, when you start with a feeling, I'm seeing calm, happy, and playful. If anyone else has any other words, you're welcome to share them. But if you have a feeling that you want to create, you can start to use this as a tool or as a guide to help you bring more joy into your space. So, Stephanie, your rental feels old and tired. So I totally resonate with that. So then what's the opposite of that? What are you craving, right? joy, harmony, safety, right? So you can look at these and you can say, okay, well, if I want harmony, then how do I create more balance or how do I add more symmetry to my space? So you can use this as sort of a blueprint for moving from, okay, there's a feeling I want to have in the space. Now, what could I change without having to, change everything? What's like one thing I could change to bring more of that feeling into my space? So feel free to keep adding your feelings if you'd like as you keep going, as I keep going. But this exercise, I think, even if you didn't do it now, it's a really good one to take away because those three words can help you when you are picking out a piece of furniture, when you're picking out a piece of art. You can look and say, does this piece of art make me feel a sense of harmony? Does this space feel comfortable, cool, and cute, right? Is this sofa comfortable, cool, and cute, or is it something else? So the more specific you can get with the feeling, the easier it will be to choose things that work together down the line. Okay, number two, focus on the foreground. So this is secret number two. And what I want to talk about now is something I call color strategy. So there are two color strategies that I typically like to play with. And I think that this can be helpful, especially when you're renting. So one strategy is called color in the foreground and the other is color in the background. And when you start to look at interior photos now, you'll be able to notice right away which strategy they're using in the space. Are they using color in the background, which means they're painting the walls, they're painting the cabinets, they're wallpapering the walls. So all of the surfaces in the background of the house are colorful. And then things in the foreground might be more neutral or they might be colorful as well. But this is the color in the background strategy. Color in the foreground uses a very simple canvas, a neutral or a white canvas, and then uses bright pops of color in the foreground. Now, the reason I think this is so useful for renters is because instead of thinking about, color in the background, that's a challenging thing to do in a rental because you have, fixed constraints. You can work on making your background as neutral and simple as possible, and then bringing color into the foreground through painted furniture, through bright textiles, rugs, things like that. I'm going to share an example. This is my student Amanda's space. And I mean, if you look at this, you can see she didn't actually paint any walls. She didn't have to touch the floors. She used surfaces like her rugs, her curtains, her throw pillows to bring color into the foreground and give this space a lot of warmth and life, but without having to, paint the walls. So this is something that's very achievable to do in a rental and can bring a lot of joy. And yet, you don't have to worry about, tackling the background of the space. One thing that makes this strategy work really well is to choose your largest surfaces. So rugs, curtains, things that have a lot of surface area can really help with this strategy. Another example, my student Sanchito wanted to create a feeling of abundance. So all of my students pick a feeling that they want to create and use those aesthetics of joy to translate it into their space. So Sanchita wanted energy and abundance in her workspace. And so this is how she created it. And again, she has this beige carpeting, but she just layers a rug on top. And you don't notice what's happening in the background so much when you pull color into the foreground. This is a space of mine, and I wanted to show this to show how much the background matters. So if you can, whatever you can do to get that background to be more neutral, rather than trying to, in a space like this, it's a little bit muddy when the color is in the background. It looks much better to just make everything a clean canvas and just put little pops of color in the foreground. So hopefully that idea makes sense. So ways to do this, I mentioned go bold with your textiles and furnishings. Increase the contrast between your foreground and background by making a clean canvas. Maximize your largest surfaces. And the other thing you can do is shop your home and group items together. So color-coded books, for example. You have lots of color in your home, but you may not notice it because it's all separated. But if you can gather, a bunch of colorful scarves and hang them in your entryway, or a bunch of blue objects and gather them together in a vignette, that can feel like something much more than the sum of its parts. So those are all strategies for using color in the foreground. So, secret number three, don't abandon your fantasies. So, I think, I don't know if you've had this experience, but you have this, you fall down a rabbit hole on Pinterest and you fall in love with like custom cabinets or millwork. And this is certainly not limited to renters. Many of us fall in love with things that will not work in our homes, but I know that it can be hard when you're dealing with, whatever kitchen your landlord has and you're thinking about, but I really wish I could have, this dream uh, burgundy kitchen or these custom cabinets, and that can be challenging. It can make you feel um, like what you want is not something you can have right now. And so, what I'd like to encourage you to do is to not abandon your fantasies. So, to create a home you truly love, tune out the noise of trends and unrealistic, photo, highly styled images, and tune into your authentic desires. And we're going to do an exercise together on how we can do that. So, this is a bit of a this is a bit of an imaginative exercise. So, what I want you to do is to imagine that you have a secret room in your home that no one will ever judge or see. So, no one's ever going to come in. Imagine you just go through, like you have one of those secret bookcases, and you go through, and there's that secret room, and not even your pets. No one can come in to this room. What would you do with it? What would you put in there? It doesn't even have to be decor, it could be totally fantastical. But I want you to just imagine for a moment, what would that space be like? And you can feel free to put some ideas in the chat of things you would like in that space. I'll just give you a minute with this because I think it's a fun one, and I don't want to share some other people's examples until I've given you just a minute to do it for yourself. Okay, so you can feel free to tap them into the chat anytime. But maybe you dreamed up a room that's all curves, or a tropical greenhouse, or a room lined in velvet. Maybe it's a trampoline room or a grown-up treehouse, or maybe you had something like edible wallpaper. Anything is fair game. I've heard people say they want an entire room of pink. I've heard people say that they want, reflective crystals everywhere. It can be anything. And it's not to say that that's what you're going to create, but the reason I love to do this exercise is because your fantasies have a richness to them, right? And they start to speak to your desires and your story. And so instead of looking at a finished product of someone else's story, it can be so helpful to just tune back into, well, what is the craving if you want a space that's all pink? You can look at your home and say, do I have any pink? Do I have anything that feels maybe soft and immersive in the way that I was hoping to? Or maybe I want some more energy and more liveliness. So think about, what is the fantasy telling you about what your space wants to be? I'm going to share an example of one of my students and how she did this in this space that's a pretty, standard white box. She had this vision of a space that was like a wealthy protagonist's library in a novel. That's what she imagined. She was like, I want to create a space that feels like that. And so this is what she did. And again, it's all color in the foreground. So she didn't touch the walls. She did hang one light fixture, which is doable for renters if you have an electrician and you're willing to, swap out a light fixture. So that's something that's doable. And then she added things that gave her that feeling. So it's not Chesterfield sofas and built in bookcases, but she created the same feeling for herself. So notice your fantasies, notice how you want to feel, and don't give up on those because you're renting in a period of time and say, oh, my fantasies are for later. Your fantasies are for now. And you can bring some piece of them to life in your space right now. Okay, so when you draw inspiration from your deepest desires, you can uncover stories that you can use to bring more joy to your home. Okay, secret number four, design for the moments that matter most. So, a lot of us, when we start moving into a new apartment, we start making a list, right? We start making a list of all of the things that we need to add to the space. It might be, we need a sofa, we need a TV, we need an end table, a coffee table. We start making a rug, we start making that list. And when decorating just becomes kind of a shopping list, we lose something important. We lose the sense that this is actually a space in which we're moving through our daily lives. And so instead, what I'm going to suggest is that you start to think about your home in terms of moments. And if you look at each room in your home, you can notice that there are certain moments that might happen in that space that matter to you. This is an example from my student Jennifer. So she said that her space was perfectly functional but not joyful, and as a result, her living room was just a place that she used to transit from the front door. So her kids spent all their time in their bedrooms. They just they hung out. Everyone was sort of dispersed. The family was never together, and she thought, a moment that matters for me and my family is spending time reading and playing games together. That's what we want. And so she, again, no change to the walls, no change to the floors, but she brought in vibrant art. She brought in a colorful rug, some colorful throw pillows, changed out the sofa. But she invested in the space, but she did it in everything here can come with them to a future space. And now this is a space that they want to be. So think about moments that matter to you. What's one moment that matters that you could design for in your home? One moment that really matters in my home is dance parties. I have a 5-year-old son and he loves family dance parties. And so we ordered an $11 disco light on Amazon. And it's really important to us that we leave open space so we don't pack everything too tight with furniture, because we really want to have space for that dance party. Well, that dance party might only happen a couple times a week, but that's a really important moment. So it doesn't have to be something that's happening every day. It could be dinner parties is really important to you and you want to design for that. But if you start thinking about that, then you will start to notice that there are certain things that it makes a lot of sense to invest in your home. And there are certain things that aren't as important. They can fall by the wayside. It helps you prioritize your budget, helps you prioritize where you're going to put your time and energy in terms of decorating. And also, you may make some unconventional choices. If you have to choose between a dining table and a sofa, let's say, maybe you will choose to have a space for gathering people rather than a space to just sit and watch TV. Maybe you choose to watch TV somewhere else. So the trade-offs that you make should be made based on your life and the kind of life that you want to live and these moments, rather than the stuff that you're finding. I love that living room set up for movie nights with husband and hangout chats with friends. Right. So think about those kinds of moments and feel free to share more in the chat, and think about this for yourself. And each room might have a few moments that matter, or there might just be one important moment. But as you think about that, that can also help you decide, where to focus, where you want the attention to be focused in the room too. Okay, so you're not just designing a home, you're designing a life. And when you focus on moments that matter, the home starts to come alive. Okay, number 5, down to brass tacks with this one. We're going to talk about customizing temporarily, right? So when you are living in a rental, there are customizations you can't do. Let's talk about some that you can. So there's removable wallpaper. There are peel and stick floor tiles. You can change out the cabinet hardware. And again, make sure you put it in a safe place. Whatever knobs that your landlord has, put those in a safe place and put them back at the end. You can do contact strips for many, many things, to be able to hold things on the wall if you can't make holes or you're worried about making holes. You can do contact paper for appliances or for countertops. Those are things that you can always tap into. Those things, I think, used to be maybe a little bit tacky, and now I think the quality is so good that sometimes it really looks like marble. It really looks quite realistic. So contact paper is a great tool for customizing things that maybe you don't like in your space. And then wireless LED fixtures and pending conversion kits. These are somewhat newer, but they're amazing. The quality, some of them you can just hold on with with command strips, and you can put them on the wall, and they're rechargeable, so you can have what looks like a hardwired sconce in your home. And it's just controlled by a remote control, but it's just an LED fixture. So these are some of the things that you can try. And I think it's just worth noticing how much it may feel like an effort, but even just a little space with a little bit of customization can really feel much more like home. This is another one I love because it's so minimal. What my student Marianne did here, she changed out the light fixtures, she swapped out her table, she added a piece of art. It's not huge, but the feeling is very different. And she talks about how, her family now lingers around the table. So some of these smaller changes, and a pendant is certainly something that you can do. You can change out, they have kits that you can use if you have a flush mount fixture to almost create like a ceiling medallion. You can put that in and then hang a pendant from it. So there's lots of things you can do, even with things that seem like they're fixed and unchangeable in this space. Some other strategies, you can paint a small high impact area and repaint it when you leave. I talked about changing out light fixtures or hardware and replacing at the end of your lease. That's something that definitely is worth putting aside, making sure you put it in a safe place. You may need an electrician for those kinds of customizations, but they can be that can be a worthwhile investment. If you're going to be in a space for a few years, that would be really worthwhile to have a light fixture that brings everyone to the center of the space. You can also request input into planned work. So for example, if you are just, touring a space and a landlord is saying, yeah, we're going to paint this before you move in. You can, as you're signing the lease, say, hey, can I request that you paint this simply white instead of just the standard Benjamin Moore white, right? And that would be a little bit of a softer white. You can look at the light and decide which white paint would be best. But my point is that, if the landlord's going to paint it white, they may not care. They may not know that actually there would be a white paint that would be more friendly, more appealing. So you can request input into some of these things and say, hey, this is not going to cost any more. Do you think you'd be open to doing this instead? You can also, if you're going to stay for a longer period of time, or if customization is really important to you, you can create a proposal for your landlord for changes that will increase the value of the home. And in those cases, generally the renter would pay. So you might say, and I'll give you an example here. This is one example. So this is an example of a technique called skim coating, which is a technique for coating counters with a very thin layer of concrete that then is sort of smoothed and polished. And the benefit of it is that it creates a hard surface, just like a typical countertop. But if you really didn't want dark counters, this is a way to lighten up the space. So my student Becca really wanted to lighten her space. This happens to be a space she owns, but she didn't have the time or budget for a full renovation. And so this is what she did. And so I think similarly, you can go to a landlord and say, hey, is this, I'd really love to skim coat these countertops. I think that, present them with a little bit of data, like light colored countertops have been selling better or trending better. And I'd love to do that improvement. And, you'd reap the benefits down the road. Or for example, you could even change out countertop. You could change out hinges. This is an example of a kitchen with peel and stick tile. But it really, I think, this really changed the feel of the space over the sort of beige linoleum. The hinges, these little gold hinges. These are sort of simple things that you can change out, but that do make a big difference in the space. And again, yeah, you could say, hey, I'm willing to pay for the installation of new countertops if it's something that you would allow us to do. So you're asking the landlord to partner with you and consider how your changes could benefit them too. So you really are trying to think about what's in it for them as you're making these changes. And lastly, design for all the senses. So when you think about your space, remember that it's not just you're not just looking at it. How does your space feel to the touch? How does it sound? What does it smell like? Some examples of designing for these things. So designing for touch, textiles, thinking about materials, whether you want a wood table or a glass table because of how It feels shapes that feel good, knobs that feel good in your hands, the firmness of your upholstery, how firm or how soft you like it, the patina on different surfaces. So all of those things have to do with how your space feels to the touch. And then designing for sound, thinking about sound buffering and acoustic materials, often important in rentals, especially if it's an apartment and you're going to be close to other people. Also, materials that sound harmonious together. So, again, if you're not doing a renovation, you could think about, I really want beautiful plates and forks, or I want to make sure that all my chairs have those sticky felt things, little pads on the bottom, so that everything sounds really calming. What music you play in your home, and designing for scent. So that includes cleaning products, personal care, natural materials. Natural materials often smell better than synthetics. So making sure that you're choosing materials that smell good. Candles and incense and soaps and things that you cook or bake. All of these things contribute to the total atmosphere of your home. And so when you think about it, creating um, a space that gives you a feeling of joy is a sensory landscape. It's not just something that you look at, it's something that you can touch and hear and smell, and it feels pleasurable to your whole body. So thinking about that as a way, that's something that you can do in any space. So just to recap, and then I'm going to wrap up. Begin with the feeling. So think about how you want your space to feel, how you want to feel in your space, and use that to guide your design. Focus on the foreground. So don't worry as much about what you can't do. You can't paint or wallpaper. That's okay. Focus on bringing color into the foreground. That can come with you anywhere you go. Don't abandon your fantasies. So start with feelings. Start with things that are gonna um, create a story for you, not just thinking about what you can and can't do in the space. Really think about trying to tap into those authentic desires and remember that secret space. You can always go back there and sort of imagine what's in there. Remember to design for moments that matter. Think about moments, not just stuff. Customize temporarily and try to get your landlord on board if you want to make deeper changes, and design for all the senses so that you have space for all of the so that you have things in your home that feel like a sensory landscape that nurture your whole being. So if I leave you with nothing else, and I'm going to wrap up here, but if I leave you with nothing else, I want you to remember that your life is happening now. So this may not be your forever home, but you're going to have memories of this home forever. And that's an important thing to keep in mind, right? That this is not just a place you're transiting through, but it's part of your story forever. And so design for a beautiful life because you deserve it, and you deserve it right here and right now. Thank you so much. And I'm going to put up a tool that you can access with this QR code or with the link. It's an emotional home blueprint that will help you bring this into your space and into your design. You can also find me on Instagram.
Thank you so much. I know I have a lot of notes, and a few spaces came to mind too, primarily my pantry. So I am going to see how I can bring some joy to that moment of my life. But thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who was able to join us today. I appreciate learning alongside of all of you. Until next time, friends.
Thank you.
Bye.